What's up, friends? I'm doing things a little bit different this week. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, this will be how they always are to you because this is the first time we've done this. If you're not new to Pint of Proof, typically I research stuff and I write out a script and I just talk objectively about what's going on in the mind of an addict. But I do think there is a time and place for personal anecdotes. And I'm also doing this deep dive on Alan Watts, famous Zen philosopher, leader of the spiritual revolution in the United States of America. And he was also just a knockdown, drag out, drunk, died an early death. And it's made me wonder, and a lot of people have wondered, should we be listening to and taking life advice from a philosopher who seemed to not be able to manage his own life? Oh man, I'm months into it, and hopefully I'll be done soon. That'll be on my main channel where I do more like filmmaking style, documentary style stuff. But here are 4 cards just to kind of keep me on track during this personal anecdote about the time that I knew I had a problem with drinking. And we'll just get into it. The first card. The problem wasn't alcohol. It was how I reacted when I was drunk. That's what I thought for a long time. And maybe that's true because consuming alcohol is a subjective behavior. And if you are consuming alcohol, but you're internally battling with it, if you've got this toxic relationship with alcohol where you're questioning whether you should be drinking or shouldn't be drinking, you've got shame. At least for me, for a long time, I thought, well, I can work through that. One day I'll learn how to moderate, and one day I'll learn how to just not say things that piss off people. I'll learn to not do stupid stuff when I'm drinking. And I did successfully get to a point in my life where I had a job and I was drinking mostly on the weekends. Sometimes, it would creep in to like a Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'd start to notice, things are upticking, so I need to dial back. Then sometimes I'd be like, oh man, you're standing in the corner, just taking a few more shots. That way you can be properly inebriated going to bed. But every time I saw one of these warning signs, I was like, okay, well, you need to dial it back. All right. Because you don't want to be doing anything dumb when you're drinking. Your fiance will tell you to stop. So I had this relationship back and forth with alcohol like that. I was like constantly trying to find out like what my perfect routine with drinking was like. And I knew that the problem with alcohol, or I thought the problem from other people's eyes, was the things I did when I was drunk. So as long as I could be normal and I could show signs of moderation, drinking and driving was a thing I did recklessly and irresponsibly, knock on wood. I never hurt anybody. I'm just lucky that didn't happen. But I understood the weight of the decision to drink and drive early on in my drinking career. So I was always a very responsible drinker. Part of that was once I had a kid, I was like, I have to be as responsible as possible. So I didn't ever drink and drive because I had a kid and I didn't want to hurt anyone else's kid. Having a child changed me in nothing but good ways. But it still took me a long time of being like a weekend drinker, being a craft beer dad. It took me a long time to start to analyze my relationship with alcohol. But for a long time, like I said, I thought the problem was with how I reacted when I was drunk. It wasn't just about consumption of alcohol. And then I quit for several 30-day experiments, and that led into me deciding to try to quit for a year. And now here I am talking to you, coming up on 2 years of not drinking. And I'll talk about why this cyclical cycle, like why it's significant that I am coming up on my full second year and I'm going to have to re-up. I'll talk about the strategy that I use for drinking. It's not like a day-to-day thing. For me, it's like a longer time frame. I'll talk about that on one of these cards. But this next card, the second card, is why don't you try moderation? I hear that from people all the time. 2 things I hear from people constantly now at parties. People will know that I don't drink because I make these videos and I talk about the things I'm going through. And I'm always very passionate about what I'm doing. I've got like that part of the addict personality dialed down. When I get into something, I'm into it. I'm telling everyone about it. I'm trying to convince people to come along. I will listen to feedback. And if you can prove me wrong, I love it. But I'm like philosophically minded. I am an addict. I obsess over things, and I also need feedback from other people. I need people to question my beliefs and to challenge me so that way I can question myself. I'm a maniac, and I'm leaning into it, and I am just like a benevolent maniac, and man, I've been enjoying it lately. Anyway, back from the tangent. Two things I hear at parties all the time when I tell people I don't drink, or people are like, oh, you're the sober guy. People are like, oh, I don't even really drink that much. I'm like, dude, you are drunk every time I see you. And I know I only see you at parties, but I see you once a quarter, once a month, more during the summer, and you are drunk every time. And every time you come up to me and you talk to me about how much you don't really drink, and drinking's not really your thing. That happens all the time now. It's like laughable. The second thing is people will passively aggressively say to me, and I know they're just projecting, and maybe they're concerned, but generally, like, I'm sure they're projecting, they're being defensive, but they're like, why don't you try moderation? Or moderation could be a thing. When I talk about how I don't drink at all, they're like, oh, you're so extreme. Oh, moderation's a thing. It's like, no, you don't need to moderate poison. When you're in a relationship, you don't go and sleep around and go, oh, I was just moderating my sexuality. No, a commitment to a healthy lifestyle is not extreme. These plants are funny. I love those plants. But it is not extreme to quit drinking. It's so silly that we do that. And it is almost like I don't think people are doing this intentionally. I really don't think so. I generally assume people have good intentions, unless it's obvious that they don't. And I think even people that do terrible things, sometimes, most of the times, those terrible things are coming from a place of good intentions, and then deep insecurity or circumstance bestows them. Nonetheless, people often are like, why don't you try moderation? Is there something wrong with you? And it starts to make me think that there's something wrong with me. So because of that, I have for a long time thought, well, I just need to figure out moderation. There's got to be a way. For a long time, even still to this day, I will start to fantasize about the 2 drink and then being done kind of model. I just have 2 drinks and that's it. Like in my mind, that's like a perfect drinker. Then I'm like, wait a second, there's no perfect drinker. Drinking's also not healthy. And people's psychology and their neural makeup, it's different from person to person. I've been learning during this whole like sober thing and making these videos, I've been learning that addicts just have different brains. There are problematic drinkers and there are take it or leave it drinkers. I fall heavily into the problematic drinker area. Fun little fact that I've learned in my exploration is that people that are problematic drinkers, if you look at their eyes and you watch them at a party, they will follow drinks. When someone opens a bottle to make another drink, a problematic drinker will look at it because they are obsessing over alcohol. A take it or leave it drinker doesn't care. I am for sure in the problematic drinker arena, which brings me to the third card, 3 of 4, 9 months. It was 9 months into me being sober for the first year-long of sobriety experiment. It was 9 months of making videos like this, of getting through the initial pink cloud phase, through getting through boredom, through going through all these life events. It was at 9 months. And I think 9 months was just a long enough time horizon that I'd been able to go through all these things in life. I hadn't learned about post-acute withdrawal syndrome yet. I'll link that at the end of this video, which is the craziest emotional roller coaster that I've been on. Pause is what it's called. I hadn't learned about this yet 9 months in, but I'd been learning enough. And I was also coming up on that time where I quit for a year. The first time I quit drinking for a period of time longer than a week, it was an experiment, a 30-day experiment. Then I did that another time. Then I made a video about it. And then I really thought about quitting for a year. And that thought of quitting for a year terrified me. So I was like, I'm going to do this experiment for a year. I'm going to document it. I think it'll be interesting to dive into it. So I knew I was going to make a video at the end of the year. And I knew I was going to have to tell people. You can like make a whole argument for accountability here. But I knew I was going to have to tell people on my YouTube channel I knew I was going to have to tell them. I quit drinking for a year. This is how I felt. Great. And this is why I went back, or this is why I didn't go back. And I thought about going back a lot. And I just was being honest about the whole process. I'd removed myself from the process long enough, and I had started looking at time instead of day to day. I'd been looking at it through chunks of time, a week, a month, 100 days, 6 months, a year. I started looking at drinking as like the whole process, like the day that I was going to drink or the day before, to me drinking, to me being hungover, and then the slippery slope and the ride of trying to find the perfect balance of moderation. I started being honest about how hard it was to moderate. People are like, why don't you just have one drink? Can't you have one drink? I can have one drink. But what it's like for me to have one drink is complete insanity. I obsess over having a second drink. And then there's some people in my life that I know that have like a 4-drink rule on Fridays. They can have 4 drinks on Friday and Saturday. I started thinking about what that would be like for me. I would think about my 4 drinks the second I woke up on Monday. And then it would leave my consciousness. And then periodically I'd get a craving, which is like neural pathway signaling, triggering, blah, 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 blah. This is a video that's an anecdote, not science. I've got other videos talking about this. Other people have videos talking about the science of addiction. So science was happening, but just the internal dialogue anecdotally was I would periodically have glimpses of what it would be like Friday night to have that first drink. And I know now that first drink, I would be thinking about the second during that first drink. I would be thinking about how quickly I should drink the drinks. I would be thinking about how strong I should make them. Are people seeing how much alcohol I'm putting in this drink? And I started really thinking, why would I do that to myself? I waste a lot of time now. I play Mario Kart. I'm obsessed with getting like my ranking up to like the next 1,000 points, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So I don't have like a perfectly balanced, super rigid life. I do run literally every day, and I work out, and I have a plant-based lifestyle. I'm monogamous AF. I've got rules and discipline, but I'm not super rigid in my life. But I have discipline and freedom now. And if I were to start drinking again, I don't think I would actually have freedom from alcohol. My entire life would revolve around moderating those drinks. And that doesn't seem like it's worth it to me. And that's why card 4, I quit for a year at a time. Because every year around this time, well, the last 2 years now, I start thinking about what would it be like if I drank again. I'm like rigid and disciplined enough that I can just put my head down and do the work. And since I've like given myself enough time away from alcohol, I sometimes will fantasize or romanticize about it, but I don't have cravings necessarily or super strong urges. But when I start thinking about drinking again, when it's coming up on that year, I start thinking about the cravings I would have and how insanely my brain would battle with itself trying to figure out moderation. I would have conversations with myself about drinking and how to regulate drinking. And that is just a certainty. I know that will happen. There isn't a world that exists where when I go to drink again, or if I drink again, I know that I will constantly be negotiating with myself about the consumption of alcohol. So it took me 9 months to realize, I have a problem with drinking. It was none of the bad things that happened to me. I always thought, just react differently. Don't punch that guy. Don't say that thing. Just don't do that stuff and you can drink. It'll be fine. It was none of that stuff. There's none of the rock bottom for me was a lot of different things when I look back, I guess. The picture of my son that he took of me, never the picture of my son, the picture my son took of me where I was just like super fat and just like definitely the craft beer dad. That was one. But really the thing that made me realize, oh, this is not a thing you should do in your life was being a sober, curious person and then becoming an honest person and then just honestly asking yourself, is it worth it to constantly have to negotiate with yourself about that next drink, how strong the drink should be, blah, 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 internal dialogue, insanity. And then when I was able to like honestly say, this is what it will be like for sure, because this is how it always was, it wasn't a sad moment. It was just an honest moment. And that's honestly when I realized I had a problem with drinking. I hope this video helps. If it did, share it with someone. And I will see you again soon. The next video will probably be more scientifically based. It will be quicker. There'll be a script. And pause. The thing I was talking about, post-acute withdrawal syndrome, this period of time to last for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, up until 2 years after you quit drinking. This emotional struggle with quitting alcohol and changing your behaviors. That video is right here, and you should definitely check it out. See you again soon. Bye.